Welcome back to Treadmill Talks. I've got Jackson's monitor up on one phone. I've got some notes in front of me, although they're fairly brief. Today, I'm going to be telling you exactly what you need to be measuring during your fitness journey, and most importantly, why you need to be measuring in the first place. I think this came about because so often when I start working with people, or when people reach out and ask questions online, the answer to what are you currently measuring and tracking is how much they weigh. And I think that is a big mistake for a couple of very big reasons, which I'll go into. But as always, I try and put all the useful information, all the implementable stuff at the beginning of the video so that you don't have to wait till the end. So you need to track these things. You need to track body composition, and I would recommend using a tape to do so and measuring your arms, your thighs, and your waist. I would also recommend 1 or 2 strength measurements. This can be body weight related, chin-ups and push-ups, or it can be strength related. Bench press, overhead press, don't really mind. And I would recommend having 1 or 2 cardio-based things to measure as well. That might be longer distances, so if you're into running, that might be 5K or 10K. It might be on a machine in the gym, so it might be a 2K row or a 60-second time trial on a bit of kit. It doesn't matter too much which you choose, so long as you choose something that you can do easily, and as long as you do something that you enjoy, because you're gonna have to test it every now and again. That's it. If you want to stop the video there and start tracking those things, that's all you need to know. For the rest of you who don't mind putting up with me being slowly becoming a sweaty mess, let's talk about why these things are important, why you're going to measure them, and why it's key that you do so in order to ensure progression and motivation. And those are the 2 big things that we're looking for. We'll come to motivation in a bit, everyone's favorite buzzword. Let's talk about progress. The reality about all things fitness, whether we're talking about losing body fat, building muscle, getting stronger, getting fitter, trying to do all of them at the same time, obviously, is that it's trial and error. There are no definite answers. If we take weight loss, for instance, we know that you need to be in a calorie deficit, but what that looks like for you may be very different to what that looks like for me and for anyone else in the world. And so there is going to be a degree of trial and error. When it comes to building muscle mass, we know that we need to perform a certain number of repetitions over a certain number of sets at a certain intensity, and we need to eat enough food. But how you go about doing that is going to be different from one person to the next. So there's a lot of individualization, and there is a lot of trial and error. And anyone who works in the fitness industry who tells you otherwise, who tells you that they have the answer for you without going through that process of trial and error is, well, I would approach them with a degree of skepticism. So the reason we're going to measure some of these things is because we have to accept to start with that we don't really know if we're doing everything that we need to be doing. So you have a goal in mind. Let's keep it simple. You want to lose some weight. Specifically, you want to shift some of the pounds that seem to have accumulated around your midsection. So there are a few things, a few dials that we can tweak along the way. We can adjust how much you are eating. So we've got a dial for your calories. And we can remove food groups, we can reduce portion sizes, we can use intermittent fasting, we can do all sorts of things. But basically, we can turn that dial of calories down ever so slightly. We've got your exercise, whether that's lifting weights, cardio, a mixture of the 2, and we can do more of that. We can turn that dial up. And then we've got your non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, your NEAT, just your day-to-day activity, the amount you walk, the amount you fidget, the activity you go through without it being specifically programmed, planned exercise. So not what I'm doing right now, for instance. And again, we've got that dial and we can turn it up, we can turn it down, we can adjust it. Usually we will change all 3 things to start with a little bit. But based upon your lifestyle, you might find it easier to adjust one of those dials more than the other. So for instance, if you spend a lot of time sitting down because you have to, if you commute long hours to work, it's going to be harder for you to take that activity dial and turn it up significantly. So you might find that adjusting your calorie intake is a little bit easier based upon your lifestyle. I'm getting off topic. The reality is that we don't know if it's having an effect if we don't measure it. You will have the same process at work, regardless of what you do. Your business, your company, your boss, your manager will set you certain goals, certain outcomes you're trying to achieve, and you'll have things along the way that you need to tick off to know that you're moving towards that end goal. It's exactly the same thing. The fewer things we measure, the harder it is to know if what we're doing is working. And this is where just measuring your scale weight, just tracking what the scales say, is a real problem, because it gives you very limited information. As a really good example, over the last couple of weeks, a client of mine came to a point where they'd been doing about a 6 to 8 week fat loss phase, and the scale weight had gone up 0.5 kilo. Now, if this person had just been measuring the scales, alarm bells would be going off in the back of their mind. And I'd be thinking, okay, what we're doing clearly isn't working because we've not lost any weight, and that's all we're measuring our success by. We need to start changing things. However, at the same time, they were measuring other things. Their body tape measurements, for instance. This individual's bicep measurements, the size of their arms, had gone up. Their thigh measurement had gone up, and their waist measurement had gone down significantly. They'd gone from a point where they couldn't do any chin-ups to now being able to do 3 repetitions with a weighted vest on. And so we could very clearly see that their body composition had improved. They had lost body fat based upon the tape measurements and probably built some muscle over the course of that 6 to 8 weeks, as evidenced by the fact that they were, well, as evidenced by all these other things we were measuring. If we had just used the scales, it would have been an unsuccessful period of time, and we would have started changing things. But actually, we could see from the measurables, from the things that we were tracking, that actually things were moving in the right direction. He had just built some muscle tissue, and so that had offset the fat loss on the scales. So instead of panicking, instead of getting all these dials and adjusting them and changing them, the plan was to just stick with the plan for a couple of weeks. Lo and behold, the scale started creeping down because the rate of muscle he was building, the rate of muscle he was gaining, slowed down to basically to a halt, which is what we'd expect. And so the scale weight kept creeping down, the fat loss kept coming off, or the fat kept coming off, so to speak. So if you're not measuring those things, you might be making progress, but you might not know it. And so that is going to influence the decision-making process. And that's all this is. Like I said, it's trial and error every single week. You have a plan, you follow the plan. You look at the outcomes every week, every 2 weeks, every month, and you go, right, am I moving closer towards whatever my end goal is? Now, for some goals, that might be really fast. For some goals, it might be a really slow process. But over time, if you're doing everything you need to be doing, you should see clear progression towards that end goal. Like I said, if you aren't making progress and you are doing the things you're meant to be doing, then your measurements will tell you that. Then you can change the plan. So, if you think you're in a calorie deficit, if you're hitting 8,000 steps a day, if you're training really hard, but things aren't moving in the way that you want them to or would expect them to, then you just need to change the plan. Maybe you need to adjust your caloric intake. Maybe you need to find a way to do a bit more activity during the day. Regardless of which dial you tweak and change, the point is that it's now an informed decision. You're not just guessing, and you're basing it off of multiple different metrics. So that's why it's really important. When it comes to strength training, the same thing. If you go in the gym and you just do random workouts and you never track anything, you don't know if what you're doing is actually helping. A really good indicator for you building new muscle, gaining muscle, bulking up, is that you start doing more repetitions with the same weight, or you start doing more weight for the same reps. If on day one, you're doing 8 repetitions with 50 kilos on the bench press, and after 6 months, you're doing 8 repetitions with 80 kilos, and you've trained steadily, you've not taken some illegal substances, you've been in a slight caloric deficit, you can be pretty confident that you've built some muscle. And this is a really good way of tracking muscle gain, because in terms of visually, it happens at such a slow pace. But if you're not tracking those key lifts, if you're not tracking your reps and your sets, all that sort of stuff, you're not going to know. And so you're going to be jumping from random workout to random workout, just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. Same with your fitness. And so you want to have lots of different things that you're tracking, not too many. You want to have lots of different things so that you can see the progress in real time. And if you don't see the progress, that's cool. No one's judging you for not making progress. You just need to change the plan a little bit until you see that progress. And then when you are moving in the right direction, you just keep it there. The second reason, and potentially the most important reason as to why you're going to track more than just your scale weight, is for motivation. When it comes to strength training and doing your cardiovascular work, there isn't really much you can do that's more motivating than seeing your progress in real time. It's such a sense of achievement going from not being able to do a chin-up or push-up to hitting your first one. It's such a buzz seeing your 5K, your 10K time come down. It's such a buzz when you start lifting weights that you never thought you would be able to. And I see this every single week with my clients in person and my clients online. It tends to be the most consistent form of feedback because you will almost always progress in one thing every single week if you're aware of it, if you're consistent, and if you're training hard. It might just be that on one set, on one training day, you use a heavier weight than previously did. That's motivating. Again, it ties back with what I was saying if you're not tracking stuff. If you're not paying attention to what you're lifting, you can be training hard, but if you're not seeing that progress in real time, you're not going to get that sense of achievement because you're not going to realize it. And I think that's why a lot of people find themselves resistant to always going to the gym because they feel like their effort, they're not rewarded for their effort. They've not got a return on their investment. They're showing up to the gym, they're training hard, but if you're doing random workouts that are different every week, or if you're not tracking stuff, you're never going to really truly know that you're doing all these awesome things. You might pick up on it every now and again. The app I use for my coaching, for my online coaches, or for my online coaching clients, tracks everything. And every single session, it says, hey, you hit a PB today. You did an extra rep. You did 8 reps with a weight. The last week, you did 7. Or you added 5 kilos to a set of 10 repetitions that you haven't done before. And having those little reminders every single week, because that's what happens when you train hard and eat well and you're consistent with your efforts, is hugely motivating. The same thing happens with fat loss. Like I used that example before, if you think you've been doing everything you should be for like a month or 6 weeks, and you step on the scales and you look down and nothing's changed, or worse, you've put on a bit of weight, what do you think the chances are that you're just going to give up there? What do you think the chances are that you're just going to be like, I'm just going to hit the big red fuck it button, I'm just going to smash a load of ice cream this weekend, this isn't working? I think that's how people get into the mindset that they can't lose weight. This is their body shape. It's too hard. Whereas if you're tracking other things, you might notice, as this individual did, hang on a minute, I've actually lost 7 or 8 centimeters off my waist, and I've put a few centimeters on my thigh and my arms, which almost always means that I've built a bit of muscle and I've lost a bit of body fat. Yeah, the scale has stayed the same, but I feel different. I feel stronger and fitter. I'm doing things in the gym which I've never done before. My clothes are fitting slightly different. People are commenting, my wife's commenting about my shoulder muscles being a bit more pronounced. If you're not aware of any of that because you're not paying attention to it, then the second you step on the scales and you've put in all that work for a month or 2 and it's stayed the same, you're going to be disappointed, you're going to be frustrated, and you're going to lose motivation and you'll stop. Whereas if you had just taken the time once a week to measure your arm, measure your waist, measure thigh, and track some gym lifts, you'll look at that scale weight and go, that is a bit disappointing. I was hoping to be a bit lighter, but I can recognize that I am physically changing. I always say to people when they talk to me and I say, okay, what are you working towards? I'd like to lose 10 pounds. The example I use, it's not that they're wrong, I'm not disagreeing with them. The example I use is, if I could snap my fingers right now and you lost 10 pounds of body fat and gained 10 pounds of muscle, would you be happy with that as an outcome? They go, yeah, that'd be amazing. Well, of course it would. You would feel so much more different. You would be healthier, stronger, fitter. You'd have more confidence in what your body could do. The scales wouldn't change. You lose 10 pounds of fat, you put on 10 pounds of muscle, the scales have stayed exactly the same. But who you are in that moment would change significantly. And so again, it all comes back to that. If you're basing success, if you're basing progress on what the scales say, and only what the scales say, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting yourself up for disappointment and frustration. It takes a handful of minutes across the week to do things like body tape measurements. It takes a handful of minutes across your workouts to make a note of the weight you've lifted. You can use an app, you can use the note section. Some people take logbooks into the gym and just physically write it out. Those are the people that stack the odds in their favor. Because if you are doing the things you need to be doing, if you're putting in the work, and you're showing up consistently when it comes to your training and your nutrition, then you are going to see that progress. Only if you're paying attention to it, only if you're looking for it, only if you're tracking all of these different things. So that's why it matters. That's why when people ask me, what do I need to track? My response is, you need to get a tape measure and you need to take a few body tape measurements every week. Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable to start with, but you need to get into the habit of doing that. That's why I say to people, you need to track what you're doing at the gym. Like, I know that you go there for a bit of headspace. I know that you maybe don't want to right now, even if it's just a few lifts. Like I said, it doesn't have to be everything. Scale weight is cool, do that. Tape measure, one arm, one thigh, and your waist. Don't make the mistake of doing a different arm each week or a different thigh each week. In terms of your lifts, 1 or 2 strength exercises, 1 upper body, 1 lower body. So that might be bench press, or even better, chin-ups. Because if you're improving your body composition, if you're losing weight, you'll get better at chin-ups. And then same with your lower body, squat, whatever, doesn't matter, so long as it's something you're going to do consistently. And then I would suggest a conditioning exercise. If you like running, running. If you like using an assault bike or a row machine or a ski erg, something along those lines. And what that's going to do is it's going to mean that A, you can always find some sort of progress. So that's going to help with the motivation side of things. If you don't lose any weight that week, if your body tape measurements don't change, but you hit a PB on your 5K run, cool, fantastic. You're motivated to keep going. And B, I forgot what my second point is. Like I said, it all ties back to 2 things. Number 1, knowing whether what you're doing is actually working or whether you're just throwing shit at the wall and guessing and seeing what sticks, because this whole process is trial and error. And 2, it's a surefire way to make sure that you don't completely run out of motivation. There are going to be some weeks where you don't want to go to the gym. There are going to be some weeks where you doubt yourself in the whole process. But if you've got evidence that the hard work you're putting in is working, that you are getting a return on your investment of sweat and effort and willpower, then you'll keep going. Simple as that. So, if you found this helpful, let me know. Been rabbiting on for a little bit. I'll see you on Treadmill Talks for the next episode. I need to work on a sign off. Oh, if you stuck around this long, just be great to leave a like or a comment. See you on the next one.